Hello and welcome to Getting It Done, a podcast about music, education, and life lessons. I'm your host, Tim Rausenberger. Today is Thursday, July 11th, 2019. This is episode 295, Joining and Building a Marching Band. We'll just keep this on in the background. Hope you're enjoying the music. This is the Colonel Bogey March, which is a style of music which would typically be associated with marching bands of the past. And we don't hear music like this too often anymore. Welcome. And thank you so much for joining me this evening for this special episode, especially with the summer upon us and marching bands in full swing all around the country. There are lots of marching bands that have already gotten started. The marching band that I work with, we already got started this past week, and we are going to be working throughout the entire summer. A lot of other schools do the same thing. We'll do some different rehearsals, and eventually we have that thing that they call band camp, and then we get into the whole thrust of the entire marching band season. So why should we join marching band? And how do you build a marching band? We're going to actually address both issues tonight because we have some people who are out there who may be wondering why I should join marching band. What are the advantages to it? What are the situations that are going to make marching band challenging throughout the course of the season, things that you can potentially expect. And then we're also going to address the topic of building the marching band. And the reason why I'm doing both is I want to make this an all marching band episode. There's some people who are going to tune in. And if you're an experienced person who's in the chat or someone who's watching this out there in YouTube land, then if you have that experience, you're going to actually learn some things tonight about why you would want to say certain things in your pitch, in your recruitment methods for joining a marching band. And then for those same people, how do we take the existing marching band that we have and make it grow? So we're going to go through both of those things, and we have some people who are in the chat tonight. I appreciate them being here with us, and thank you again for the fact that we ran into a lot of technical difficulties last night. I actually was not planning on having it tonight because I had a very, very big function before and afterward, hence the suit that I have on here. There it is, schnazzy for this episode. It's the first time I've worn a suit, so there you go. But I'd like to give a big shout out to various people here. Thank you very much. So Val is here. Ken is here. Awesome game 2016. Great to see you. I see Alexa is saying heli to all of us. So heli to you as well. Sean Stella Hart's great to see you. Haven't seen you in quite some time here. So it's great to see you back. Jazzy Games is joining us. Michelle Gallegos back for more action in the Getting It Done podcast. Julian Marone, welcome. Great to see you here. Certainly an excellent leader in his own right. And as we're going along tonight, you can see behind me, yeah, we are in the Getting It Done mobile. It is pouring outside, and if it weren't, I would be outside doing this episode, but it is just coming down like cats and dogs out there. So we're in here in the car, and we are getting it done in between some big events this evening. So let's get right to it. The first thing that I need you to do, hello, Watermelon Duck. First thing I need everybody to do, and Alice will be able to help me out because I'm going to do the best I can. I know there are going to be a lot of questions that come in this evening. Please, please do not be offended if I don't get to your questions right away. What I'm going to ask Alice to do this evening is as questions come in, if you can please, Alice, if you can do me a huge favor and text those to me, that would mean the world because I'm trying to do the two things at once here, and actually seeing the texts on the good old cell phone will be a little bit easier for me. So I thank you in advance for that. And of course, a big thank you to Alice. If everybody could give it up for her, appreciate all of her efforts as always. So why do we join the marching band? So as I'm talking about this right now, get your questions, start throwing them into the chat. Any question you can possibly think of. It could have to do with why you should join. It could have to do with some things that you might be scared of, things that you're not sure what to expect. Any of those types of questions, and then things that you would want to do if you're a student leader or you're aspiring to be a student leader, things that you should potentially do to take your marching band and make it grow, 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 grow. So think of all those different types of questions, and without further ado, let's get into reasons why you should join a marching band. All right, so first things first, marching band is significantly different than the typical band that we are used to in school. So a lot of students will grow up, and as they are going through elementary school or middle school, they might play some type of band instrument. Band instrument, of course, not being a member of the string family, so they might play flute or clarinet or saxophone, trumpet, French horn, trombone, euphonium, baritone, tuba, or percussion. The reason I specifically gave you those instruments is because those particular instruments are all members of the marching band. Other instruments, perhaps like the oboe, the bassoon, could you put them on the field? Yes. Are they traditional marching band instruments? They are not. And I'm not going to get, that's the topic and conversation for another day. But your traditional band instruments that I just named are the ones that you're going to find not just in your concert band, which you would be playing in school, which is you're seated on stage and you rehearse, whether it's before, after school hours, or during school. And then you play your concerts probably on a stage or some type of setting where it's you work, and then you do one big concert, and then that's that. A marching band is different in the aspect that it is, for lack of a better word, it's an ongoing process. And that's something that's a little bit hard to grasp for students because throughout the course of the season, it's kind of crazy, but the finished product doesn't happen in week one. The finished product doesn't happen in week 4. We take a particular show, we take particular a field show, or we take particular music that we're performing, and we're just growing and trying to expand upon it throughout the course of a marching band season. When you join a marching band, a lot of people think right away, oh, I'm going to need to learn how to march. Not necessarily. Depends on what part or what faction, what section of the marching band you decide that you are going to join. There are many different parts of a marching band, and I want to go through those different parts. So the first thing I'm just going to put down, I'm just going to basically put down basic woodwind and brass instruments. Okay, so you have your basic woodwinds and brass. That would again include your flute, your clarinet, saxophones of any type variety, your trumpet, your French horn, trombone, euphonium, baritone, tuba. And I'm just going to stop it there because that sums up your woodwinds and your brass that you would typically find in a marching band. Now, this is where things get more interesting with a marching band because it's not just those particular instruments. We also have different types of percussion, and there's not one specific type of percussion. So if we put percussion here and we expand on percussion, we will have lots of different instruments that we'll see on the field. The percussion has two different areas. One area of the percussion is known as the battery, and the other part is the pit. So I'll just put pit and I'll just put percussion in parentheses. Now, your battery, those are the students who are on the field who are marching around, and they're playing snare drums, they're playing bass drums, they're playing these toms. There'll be like 4 or 5 toms. So the quad toms or the quads or the quint toms, 5 of them, the quints. So you'll have students that play that. You may have cymbals in your band. So those are the typical instruments we're going to find that are going to be marching around the field. These students wear harnesses, and their drums are attached to them, so they're able to move around on the field. Now, there are some marching bands out there who don't have marching percussion, who do not have a battery, and they may have the percussion stationary right in the middle of the field, and the percussion never moves. They just stay in the middle of the field. You don't see that too often. I have seen some bands that do, which I find pretty interesting and fascinating, who will do their marching band show a la Super Bowl halftime style, whereas there's a stage set on the field, and the percussion might be on the stage. You might have some electrical equipment, so different types of amplifiers, perhaps guitars, electric guitar, keyboard, and such. And I've seen some marching bands who have done that. Not too often. When we think of the marching band here in the 21st century, we're talking a lot more about the battery that's marching around on the field. So covered those particular instruments, but then we have the pit percussion. And the pit percussion is quite a bit different. I think the best way that I can explain the pit percussion, it's a combination of different sound effects and keyboard type instruments. So what are you going to have in your pit percussion? You are going to have, I'm just going to use the word xylophone. Okay, xylophone, because a lot of us can identify with a xylophone when I say it, because a lot of you have played it before. The thing is that some of you who have played the thing that you think is a xylophone may not actually be a xylophone. You may have actually played another instrument, which a lot of high school students love when they get a chance to actually play it. I know in our high school band room, students love playing this particular instrument, which is the marimba, which is basically a xylophone, but think that the sound is not so harsh. We're using yarn mallets, and it's kind of a warmer style sound. So we have marimbas. Marimbas tend to be very, very large. The xylophones are not so large. They have more of a piercing sound. So you also will have bells. Okay, so basically just your bells. And just to again answer, and I'm going to do the best I can because I know Esther is asking what is a xylophone. The xylophone is, if you were to look at a percussion instrument, it kind of looks like a piano. You have the, what you can imagine, the white keys and then the black keys in front of you, but they're not white and black. They are all in almost every case that I've seen anyway, they're all the same color. Okay, so we have the same color there. So with a xylophone, more of a piercing sound. Typically, wood or some type of synthetic material that's comparable to a wood sound. Quality marimba has wooden bars, whereas bells, on the other hand, are of course going to have the metal bars. Now, those are your keyboard instruments that are found in the pit. We also have some other instruments which you might find in the pit. These could include any of the, for lack of a better word, toys, your triangles. You could have a tambourine. You could have claves. These are different types of fun instruments. If you could have a, you have the slide whistle type of sound. I did a poor job. I give myself a D- for that horrible sound I just made. You could also, I've seen bands that have a gong, big gong in the pit. There are marching bands who also will bring timpani out. So the timpani are those big kettle drums, and they'll bring the timpani, and the timpani will go also into the pit. And you could even bring a concert bass drum, a large bass drum that is not used for marching with the battery, but it will actually remain in the pit. And you can add whatever instruments it is that you desire. So those are the different instruments that we have to choose from in a marching band, okay? As in things that you're going to play in some way that you're going to blow into or you're going to be striking. So we are dealing with woodwinds and brass. I named all those, and then different styles of percussion instruments, the battery on the field, and then the pit. And the pit is literally that. Imagine if you are watching a theatrical production or you're watching like a Broadway play. And while the actors and actresses are on stage, in front of you, could be directly in front of you or maybe even down below, depending on the place where they're performing, is what we call the pit or the pit orchestra. And that's what we have here. We have the pit percussion. So they're not marching on the field. They are on the sideline over there. And then you have an interesting person who's going to be on the field, who's going to be the drum major. Now, the drum major, and if we want to be really politically correct, we really should say drum majorette as well. Okay. And yes, Julian, you're absolutely correct in calling it the front ensemble. That's absolutely correct. There are, it depends on where you go. Certain states that you'll go to will call these different types of things, but front ensemble, absolutely. So the drum major is the person who conducts, the person who's conducting the band. In almost every situation with marching bands, the director, the person who is the teacher, does not conduct the band during the performances. You actually have a student who has been appointed, however it is, and their job is to actually conduct everything from start to finish. Do you have one drum major? Well, it depends. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you have a small marching band, typically with smaller marching bands, you tend to have only one drum major. But when the marching band gets a little bit larger, or if you have, for instance, let's say one of your finest musicians happens to be a trombone player, you have an excellent trombone player who really should be one of the drum majors, and you know that you want that trombone player to perhaps play a big solo at some point during the show, then you can't make that person the drum major the entire time, and you might have two drum majors. I've done that in the past where one drum major will conduct two songs and the other one conducts the other two. Sometimes I've even had one conduct three, and then maybe someone who's not as great, not as strong a conductor will only conduct one. It varies. In some cases, I've had as many as three drum majors, depending on the needs and the strengths of the student. Now, you have your drum major. The drum majors in older marching bands, the drum majors would be on the field and would not be conducting from the sideline. Now, when they're conducting on the sideline, so they're able to be seen by everyone in the marching band and everyone in the audience, they are up on some type of a platform. Typically, the platform is about 6 feet high. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes lower, usually about 6 feet high. And it's you're hoping that I have a bunch of bars around it because you want to be able to be able to make sure that the drum major is safe. It is a student after all, but sometimes the weather conditions can be pretty brutal out there. But so the drum major is conducting up on that particular platform. So we've covered a lot of people in the band, but we have one group of people that you will find in a marching band that you would never see on a stage with a concert band, because we have the drum major who's the conductor, and the conductor is typically the teacher. We talked about percussion, we talked about woodwinds, we talked about brass, but now we are going to be getting into those people that have those flags. And no, we're not talking about the American flag. We're talking about different color flags, and we are talking, of course, about the color guard. So the color guard, these are the people who are, I'm saying waving flags, but that's not all that they do. They do a lot more. They will be dancing. They might be using other types of props other than flags. We had one particular show I did several years ago, which was so much fun. It was a winter-themed show. And what we had was the color guard, instead of waving flags the entire show, for one of the tunes, which was actually called Winter, we actually had the color guard dancing in the front with these giant, beautiful snowflakes. And they were doing all different types of things and moving them around. So it's really, I'm sorry, I just laughed at what Ken typed. I'm going to get to that in a second. I'll get to it. So if you think about color guard, you're talking about it's part dance. It's part, in some cases, gymnastics. There's part marching. There's a lot of things involved with being a member of the color guard. Ken says, what if you get hit by those flags? It hurts a lot. And I'll tell you something. I even tell the color guard members in all my bands, I said, when I'm around, if you happen to see me, don't move and don't try to move out of the way. I said, if I actually get in the way and I'm in your way and I'm that foolish to be that too close to your flag and I get clocked on the noggin over here, I deserve what I get. And I've had color guard members, I'm so sorry. But the reality is you got to stay away. What happens is you're probably wondering, oh, my goodness, could this happen in the middle of a field show? Yeah, it could happen in a field show, but it's probably not going to happen if you have a drill designer. There's someone who's hired to actually write who's going where all over the field. So the marching band is actually marching into different types of formations and making different types of shapes. They could make a giant oval. They could make a circle. It could be a big square, a triangle. It could be, and when we think triangle, it's not just a triangle, just the outline. I'm talking about a triangle that's completely filled in, or maybe it's upside down, where we like to call that in marching band a wedge, or in certain parts of the tune, we would almost call that a power wedge, which would be really, really probably a loud moment. So the band is nice and close together and they can hear each other extremely well. And other times there might be different types of swirls on the field. If you get into more advanced marching bands, you're going to find that they actually, like, for instance, I showed our band, the Ohio State marching band, Ohio State University. And they're not the only great marching band out there. There are many, but they have some. Their videos are outstanding. One of their shows, which is certainly one to look up, would be their Michael Jackson show. It is sensational. It is fun. It is exciting. And if you look at it, the way that the drill is written, it's written in such a way that if everybody goes where they're supposed to go, nobody's going to hit anyone. We're now at the point, and not just recently, but for many, many years now, we're at the point where almost every drill writer is using a computer, and the software, there are a lot of different software companies out there. The software recognizes that when you're going from one formation to another formation, it knows if the clarinet player is going to be coming too close to a color guard member, and it will actually on the screen danger, and you don't want to do this because the clarinet player is going to get on count 8 is going to get clocked in the head by a flag. It's pretty amazing, and it's marching band has really evolved and come a very, very long way in that regard. So in terms of joining the marching band, I think it's important that you know all of the different types of instruments that are available, all the different types of options that are available. Every marching band is different. Some of our marching bands actually have auditions. I know a lot of marching bands will have auditions specifically for the color guard and any type of percussion. Doing some type of audition or placement for percussion is really for almost any reputable marching band is important, because you don't want the wrong people on the wrong parts, and people who are strong in a certain area, you want them to be playing the appropriate instruments. In the case of color guard, we have had auditions in the past just because there are some people who are just simply not ready for color guard, and we never want a situation where we're going to be setting up a student to potentially fail. We want our students to succeed on the field. We want our students to have an enjoyable experience, and no one's going to have an enjoyable experience if things are a hazard out on the field. So it is important, and I'm jumping a little bit in terms of building a marching band, but if you're a director out there and you are trying to come up with guidelines for the marching band, and you know that there's a particular student who is interested in a particular position with the marching band, and quite frankly, they're going to be in a situation where they are probably going to struggle no matter how hard they try, then you find something else for them. And what I would say is, and every single band has it a little bit different, but I'm just going to be putting this type of crew, and everyone has something different. What we call it is what I'm putting in parentheses, the equipment crew or the pit crew. These people are critical. They're very, very important. They're vital members of the marching band, typically not dressed in uniform. But they actually, a lot of times they're dressed in the school colors, or they're dressed in all black, and think of them as nothing more than the stage crew for the theater. And there are some people that don't like performing on stage. Some people that don't want to be on the field doing the field show. This is an outstanding thing to do because you're actively involved. You can be part of the group. You are very, very important. I'll tell you, the equipment crew, the pit crew is vital to me throughout rehearsals, because I might have an issue with my microphone when I'm giving different types of commands. We may have an issue with the sound, and those people are they're so very important. So recruiting people for equipment crew, if you know someone that let's say you're already in a marching band and you know someone who really wants to join, but maybe in your particular situation it might be too late for them to join, then we get them involved with equipment crew, pit crew, where they can be moving the equipment. And the idea is to sell it in a type of way where it's going to be fun and it's going to be exciting and they feel wanted. You don't want to just move this, because then they feel like you're like commanding them like an animal to move things around the field, and that's not what we want. We want the idea of marching band. Which brings me to my next thing. Why join a marching band? Marching bands are typically very tight-knit ensembles. They're tight-knit groups. A lot of people will call their marching band a family. And a lot of people think of that because there are some people who are able to, at that point in their lives, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and between everything that they've gone through already in elementary school, middle school, now they're into high school, they're trying to find a way to fit in, a place to go, a place where you feel comfortable, a place where you're going to be accepted for who you are. And I've had some students, some tremendous students over the years, who I just have felt that they're not the best fit for marching bands. And I do not aggressively recruit some of those people because that's just really not their thing. And some of them have been great players on their instruments. Whereas I have some other students who maybe have not been the best players on their instruments, but they've turned into tremendous leaders. I've had many students over the years who were not the greatest person in the color guard with their flag work. They were not the strongest player on the field, yet were able to elevate themselves to becoming an officer within the band and be able to be a leader in that regard. Marching band's wonderful in that regard because it doesn't just reward the people who play their instruments well. Now, more often than not, it does, because typically those people are very talented, they're very gifted, and they do have to work hard. But I can tell you over the years, some of my greatest leaders in a marching band, some of my strongest students have not always been the people that play their instruments the best. I've seen many people who march. They're incredible at marching, not great at playing, and then the other way around. They're really, really great at playing, and they're awful marching on the field. So there are many, many different things to consider in terms of that with the marching band, in terms of joining. So why else should we join? Marching band is something that is very, very powerful for your resume or your portfolio. Okay, so what does that mean? And by the time we're in high school, we should know this. It's basically what you're going to be presenting to a potential employer, colleges where you're going to be applying, anything along those lines. This is an excellent thing to put down, because when they see that you're in a marching band, they know that you have made a commitment. Anyone who knows anything about marching bands knows it's not just go onto a field and la 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 la. It's not like that. Their marching band is very, very, very hard work, long hours, and there's a lot that's involved. And especially if you're part of a successful marching band program, then people will recognize that. I'm a graduate of Bergenfield High School. And I actually showed my students recently. I was able to find myself in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in 1990. It was quite some time ago, but we were able to march down Broadway, New York City, and it was a memorable experience. It was great because it was also in my senior year, which was very, very thrilling. But when you say in the state of New Jersey, you say Bergenfield, people know Bergenfield for their marching bands, because Bergenfield, I believe still to this day, I think they have the record for appearances in the Macy's Day Parade, and that's worldwide. They've been there many, many times. So when your marching band or your program has, thank you very much, when your program has that type of reputation, then people can look on it very, very favorably. Why else do we want to join the marching band beyond just being able to put it down on a resume? You love going to football games. You want to be able to go in for free. That's a great reason to join the marching band right there. Okay, the admission might be a good amount of money, and you want to be able to cheer on the football team. And in the case of some students who want to try to be cheerleaders, and maybe they don't make that team, or they don't feel confident or comfortable enough to be able to try to make it onto that type of squad, now they can be in the marching band. Perhaps a color guard would be a very viable option. And we also had some students who, I've even had some students in rare situations who were able to be on the football team and be in the marching band. Hasn't happened much, but we were able to make it work in particular situations. So joining a marching band, I have to be very honest with you. I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy. It's a lot of hard work. Any quality marching band is going to have a lot of hours. There is going to be periods of downtime, which can be good and bad. Not so good when you're on the field and you're waiting for another section to get their footwork down and their leg work marching around the field, and or if there's a particular, because we have to, of course, work on the music. In most marching bands, the marching bands memorize all of their music. Is that very, very daunting? Is that scary? Yeah, it probably is very scary to most of you. I can tell you, in all of my years of teaching, I've never, ever had a student at the end of the season come up to me and say, I can't ever do this again because I couldn't memorize the music. It's never happened, not once. Even the students who struggled the most with it and had a difficult time memorizing the music or playing the music at all, I've never once had a student say that the reason they didn't want to play in marching band again was because they couldn't memorize the music. There's so much repetition involved that it happens, and if you are missing a few of the notes, hey, listen, that's not the end of the world. You can certainly make up for it in many different ways, and as long as you're keeping your strut and you're marching with lots of confidence, everything's going to be great out there. And yeah, I'll admit that I've seen plenty of marching bands over the years. I really haven't been part of most of those, but I've seen marching bands over the years where you have people who are on the field who can barely play their instruments, but they're having a great time out there, marching very, very well with a lot of confidence, even though they don't have their music down very well, and again can still have a very enjoyable experience. So there are just so many positive attributes involved with being in a marching band. And if you have one, you need to just at least find out, what is it about? How does this marching band work? Are you finding that you're connecting with the kids? Do you like the atmosphere? Do you like the director? Do you like the schedule? Do you like the different things that the calendar has to offer in terms of perhaps your marching band competes? They go to lots of festivals. They march in lots of parades. We heard at the beginning, the Colonel Bogey March. There's definitely marching bands out there. We're one of them, the group that I co-direct. We march in a lot of parades to build esprit de corps, which is basically a way of saying a very, very happy feeling, not just within the band, but of course within the community, and being able to share our gift of marching and music with others. And parades are just a great way to do that. Marching bands are just so important in parades. So you have to weigh your options, and to be honest, it's not for everyone. I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody it's for everyone, but I can tell you that it is a very, very rewarding experience if you get involved. And even if you were to do it for only one season, do it, because you probably will never get that type of opportunity for the rest of your life. So in terms of joining, check out your program. If you have questions where you have a little more trepidation, not really sure, please feel free to contact me. Again, if you have questions, please put them into the chat. I'm going to answer some questions right now, and then I'm going to get to the building component in just a minute, in terms of building a marching band and how you can make it even better. So let's see what kind of questions we have here. Let's see. Okay. So let's see what kind of questions Alice has sent me. Okay. Okay, so one question I got that came in from Ken is band camp hard? It's not any harder than the rehearsals themselves. Think of band camp. If you've ever been part of any type of a camp in the summer, a sports camp, a rec camp, where you're maybe outside for long hours, or you are very, very active, or there are different types of activities that are associated with the group. That's really what band camp's all about. I was just talking to a student about this today. Your typical band camp will be at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's most band camps are. That's how we do it. But I've been with marching bands that rehearse 12 hours a day for 7 or 8 straight days, which My thought process, I think that that's overkill. I think that you just get to the point where your brain just checks out, and more often than not, with a 9 to 9 type of, or an 8 to 8 type of structure, by about the third or fourth day, you have students that they literally they're conking out right in the middle of the day, and I've seen that. But a 9 to 5 schedule, so you can kind of think of it as an 8-hour rehearsal, and if the directors of the band, the staff, if they're doing it properly, if they're structuring it properly, then you are not marching the entire time. You're not sitting out on a field broiling in 95-degree temperatures. And if you're on turf, that turf adds more heat. So is it hard? It's hard in terms of you're there for a long time, and you're doing a lot of different types of activities. Typical band camp situation will have you spending about probably half the day, about 4 hours or so, maybe 5 hours at most, where you're actually out on the field. Now, what are you doing out on the field? You're working on the drill, moving from point A to point B and figuring out how to put that all together with music. But then the other component is your basics, in which you are getting commands that are like a military style, where you're saying like band 10 hut, meaning go to attention. Other bands will say, as we do, detail a 10 hut, which is a form again of attention. And we say detail because as opposed to just saying band, you're now, by saying detail, you're including the entire unit, you're including the guard in that regard. The other thing that I love about detail is it's very percussive. Detail a 10 hut, as opposed to band 10 hut. You can still do it, but the detail actually keeps things in time, and it has to be crisp when the commands are given. So you practice different types of basics where you're marching forward and you march backward, and you learn how to halt all at the same time. So then when the band goes out in public and they're out on the field doing their halftime field show, or they're marching in a parade, they look crisp. That's the key. And when someone when someone it looks incredible, when a group looks incredible, it's magic. It's absolute complete magic, and people are like, whoa, before they even play a note, just watching them. And when you see that type of precision, and the people looking straight ahead, and they're not looking off to the side, and they're not smiling, and they mean business when they're doing what they're doing, it really it gives you a sense. It gives you this amazing rush and this sense of power and excitement inside. You get this adrenaline that goes through your entire body, and the crowd usually responds accordingly. Let me take some more questions here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, let me see some more things. Okay. Just communicating here with Alice. Okay. Let's see what other types of questions we have here. Let's see. Go through it. This is great. Michelle asks a great question. What if we are in sport? And I do know that she happens to be a tennis player, but what happens if you're in a sport? It all depends. Every marching band is different. There are marching bands, unfortunately, out there that ban students from doing both activities. I'm very happy to say that I've never been in a situation with any marching band where we have prohibited anyone from actually being involved in the activity. It's never happened. We've always allowed students to do whatever the sport is, as long as it's not directly a direct conflict. Of course, if you're a cheerleader, you can't. If you're on the football team, in almost every situation, you can't. And especially nowadays, there are lots of different regulations that are in place in terms of students during halftime. They have to have a specific number of minutes of rest. So there are a lot of administrations, and I think it's almost, I think, like from a legal standpoint at this point, where the students just they can't be going they can't be going onto the field and marching, and it is physical. It's a physical activity. It's kind of a combination of part music or part performance and part sports. I absolutely challenge anyone out there who says that marching band is easy. If it's so easy, no problem. Why don't you hop on the field and go through a basics box with me? I'll be happy to put you through what it's like to be in a basics box with me, because I can say that that's one of my strengths in terms of firing off commands, and I would happily give most ROTC instructors a run for their money when I am giving my commands out on the field. So basics boxes can be very, very challenging. You even have some fun things called march-offs, which is a Simon Says type of thing. Everybody's in the big box, of 60 some odd, 70, 80 kids on a field, and you give a command, and if you do the wrong command, you're out. And you don't get second chances or anything until you literally have the last person standing on the field. And it's exciting. It's very, very exciting when you're that last person on the field. And it's a great confidence boost, especially like if you make it into the final 5 or 10 people or so. And I always make a really big deal about those students. I really, really love when the younger students, the inexperienced ones, get very, very far in a march off. That's fun. And of course, we also have something called Medusa. Type that is in here, especially for my students that are out there wondering what Medusa is. Medusa is where you stand like a statue. You're called to attention. So detail, attend, hut, and you stay there and you don't move and you're frozen. I'll do it. Okay, the rain was bothering me. But I've had situations, I think the record was we had a student once, I think, who was able to stay at attention, no flinching, absolutely no movements, nothing. We had kids that were jumping around, doing funny dances, and all these different types of things. And the student, I think, was at attention for, I think it was about 45 minutes. We couldn't. We actually had to stop it because she just would not break the attention. And I have to say, I have to give the girl power, woman power, female power out there, because to my recollection, I actually can't think of any male who's actually won a Medusa. I don't think I have. I think maybe one male over the years. It always seems to be a female who seems to win. So there you go. Okay, so let's see. We got some more questions that have filed in here. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is a great question, and one of them is very, very specific. It had to do with our own particular show. It all depends. In most situations, like with our marching band, we typically do not perform at away games. We typically just play in the stands, just from a logistical standpoint. When you perform nowadays, unfortunately, at most away games, when you perform before the football game begins. Well, the problem with that is that you don't have too many people there. Now, if you know you're going to have a very, very large audience there, that might be different, and there might be a case for doing it. But otherwise, typically I'm kind of happy in the sense that I'm not really into performing for 9 people. As opposed to when you perform in at the halftime show at any game, you pretty much have everybody there. By halftime, everyone is typically in the stands. By then, you have several hundred people, if not into the thousands. But when you're only performing for a very, very small number of people, it's just not as fun. So I need to move. Mr. R, move. I need to move. I'm not sure where I'm moving to. I need to move somewhere. Mr. R, move. Okay, move. There's some moves. Okay, now you got your moves. Okay. All right, let's see what else we have here. Looks like have one coming in from Julian Marone. I'm going to answer that one in a minute. It has to do with building a marching band, so I'll get to that in a second. Great question by Watermelon Duck. What's the best way to stay in time while marching? What I would say is, yeah, and a lot of students don't do it. They just don't do the work at home, and it is what it is. I've just come to accept it, that students typically do not march at home or march out on the street, but the better groups I've had over the years have, and on their own they practice their marching. One of my private students actually uh, literally has practiced his roll stepping and practiced his marching right there in his house. And he doesn't have a very big house either. And he actually practiced it and really has become an outstanding marcher. He's only a sophomore now and made himself into a great marcher by just doing a lot of marching right there in his home. I know that can be challenging, but the best way to stay in time, you really have to do it on your own. Just like anything else, there's a lot of work that has to be involved, and it can't just happen. You can't just wait until the rehearsal every single time. You have to do the work on your own, with or without some type of a beat. You could use a metronome, and there's apps out there for metronomes, and you can set the beat. The march tempo is typically 120. That's typically the march tempo, so you can put that on, and you can practice marking time and marching around. The other thing, of course, the other challenge is making sure that you are roll stepping. That is, that the foot, a little hard for me to do here, but if you can imagine your foot, if this is the heel, these are the toes, it's an effect like this, where the heel hits and you roll forward. And if you do that, then you won't get the type of sound. If you don't do that and you're not fluid with your feet, then you're going to be it's just going to be really, really messy. But if you get the nice roll there, the sound is going to be super, super smooth. Okay, and let's see if we have any others. I think I've hit just about everything. Okay. Okay, and one other one I have to answer, which Sean Stella Hartz was asking about, how do you improve in terms of not messing up or the arms getting tired? I'll give you the best tip for your arms not getting tired, and this is free advice for everybody out there, okay? So, okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Cindy. I got it. Okay, so in terms of arms not getting tired, here's what you need to do, okay? Practice at home with your instrument. So if you're playing with a trumpet, doesn't matter what instrument you're playing with, okay? And if you can find some type of way to put some type of weights on your arms. I know some people will have those weights that they'll use just to build up their biceps. They might have like 2 or 5 pound weights that they put on their wrists. Some people put them on their ankles, but something like that. You don't even have to go out and buy it. You can be innovative. If you put something on your arms, some weights on your arms, and then you go to if you go to put your arms up and you keep them up there for a while, if you can do it with those weights, then you're going to be golden. You're going to be fine throughout the entire season. But you have to do it a lot. And again, you have to do it a lot on your own. If you wait only until rehearsal every single time, those muscles are not going to be built up. Okay, at this point now, just because of the time and because of where I need to be in a little while, we're going to have to kind of move it along here. We're going to get into the building component of the band. Now, I'm going to actually answer Julian's question here. Based on my experience, what was the most challenging part in building a marching band? The most challenging part with building any marching band is, it's very, very simple. Being able to build connections. Making connections. And what I'm talking about specifically is the ability to be able to connect with a student population. If you are in a situation where you are unable to present an assembly, if you are unable to discuss the marching band with your potential people, if you are unable to hold a function, it makes it very, very difficult. My most challenging moments are always the first years I've ever worked with marching bands, because in your first year, you don't know anyone, they don't know you, and you have to adapt to them, they have to adapt to you. And if you were not directly involved with the recruitment of them coming into the group, now they're view of marching band might be different than what your view is as a director. So that's definitely what one of my biggest ones is. The key and the secret sauce to building your marching band is you have to build connections. That is absolutely critical. Building those strong, making those bonds with students, building those types of relationships. It's critical, absolutely critical that if the student likes the director, already a lot of the battle is won. Because if the student enjoys being around the director, then they're going to be a lot more likely to buy into, try it out. And you have to be very, very convincing. We had a student one time. I'll never forget this particular student. Oh my goodness, this goes back. This was very, very, very early in my career. I think this was about the 4th or 5th year of me teaching. We had this one particular student, and he was one of those kids. He was just, for lack of a better word, he was an outcast. He was somebody who he didn't have any friends at all. A nice kid, wonderful. I mean, just really, really beautiful human being. Really, really kind and very, very gentle. Not a great trumpet player. He'd be the first to admit it. But the thing that always made him special to me was because he always thank you and just great manners and wonderful, wonderful family. And he was terrified to show up to the summer rehearsals and to band camp. Absolutely terrified. He just didn't want to do it. And I remember talking to, we had an excellent drum major that year, and the drum major knew his middle school teacher extremely, extremely well. And I said to the drum major, I said, I need you to actually call him now. I want you to call him up and say that the middle school teacher was absolutely raving about him. I said, it needs to come from you as a student, which means that when you're building, you may need to look to the students and say, you know what, I need your help. I need you to try to get this student to understand how great this would be for them. And that's the key. Don't ever look at it as it's going to be great for us. If you look at it in a selfish type of way, well, I need this trumpet here and I need this. No, that's not the approach. You need to make it clear. And that's really what your approach should never be anyway. The idea is to present, ooh, lightning, cool, is to present an excellent, rewarding, gratifying experience for the students. It is not about having the New York Philharmonic out on the field. That's not what we're doing here. That's not what your purpose as a teacher should be in music education. The purpose is to provide an excellent, outstanding experience. And for some of these students, marching band completely changes their lives. So I will ask students to make phone calls. And in this case, the drum major called the student up and said, you know, we'll find some way to get you a ride here. Did everything we could. The student finally showed up like an hour late. He was so terrified, and I feel like I'm going to throw up, and he was so nervous. And by the second day, he totally settled in, and he wound up becoming one of our greatest leaders. I mean, just a tremendous leader. Never again a great trumpet player. And he tried. He really did try very, very hard. He was never a great trumpet player, but what a tremendous leader. And it really built up his confidence. And it changed him as a human being. He was so shy and so introverted. And then all of a sudden he became it wasn't about popularity. It was that he became a lot more extroverted. He felt more comfortable around people and wasn't so scared, and started to get out of his house a lot more often, started to socialize more with people, and whatever it takes. And marching band is able to provide that opportunity. In terms of building a marching band, you need to have some type of way that you're going to be able to recruit. In my particular case, what are things that I've done? I'll put together PowerPoint presentations where you discuss famous people who have been in a marching band before. That's easy as just Googling the information. It's right there. You may see that in the title, I have Desiigner, the rapper, with the two I's in his name, and he played saxophone in his marching band. And that's significant. I mean, it's a rapper, but he played in a marching band. And there are so many other musicians out there, famous musicians, famous politicians, famous superstars, and they were a member of their high school marching band. So when you can put that type of spin on it, that can be another selling point. You absolutely want to show some videos, some type of videos of what the marching band has looked like, and I'll even just say like a professional level at that Ohio State. I really consider them to be pros and show them what that looks like. You can show them drum corps videos. Again, for my students that are here this evening, you can look up DCI. And that's known as drum corps, and for lack of a better word, they're professional marching bands. You're a color guard person, you want to see some tremendous flag work, check out drum corps. Check out DCI. Just type that into YouTube. You can type in DCI championships. They're going on right now. The championships, I believe, take place sometime in August. I don't know where they are this year, but that's their professional groups, big time, and they have them of all ages, teenagers, and then they have those senior circuits where adults that still love to march, and they're in their 30s and they're still marching. Thank you, Alice. Thank you. There are marching bands out there who will give you preferential treatment. They are ones that actually pay their students in form of a scholarship to actually be a member. How cool is that? You get to be a member of the marching band and you basically get paid, because if you're getting a scholarship, you're being paid. That's a great reason to do it right there. And if you do a pep band or something like that, where you play in the stands, maybe at a basketball game, you can get paid for that as well. So that's another selling point that you can use. Other things in terms of building a marching band, you need to have rules and regulations in place. If you don't have some type of rules and regulations where you have an attendance policy that's firm, in place, and what the types of expectations are for the students throughout the course of the season. It needs to be consistent. If you do that, then you're providing the structure. When that structure is not there, and it seems like a big free-for-all, and we can just do whatever we want when we're in uniform, not a good message. Especially when we're in uniform, you are representing your school. So we need to basically set a great example for everyone, and know that you are in that type of role, that type of capacity, and you don't want to be a bad reflection on your town, on your community, on your school district. With that, I sincerely appreciate all of you who have joined us this evening. I do have our winner of the $15 Amazon gift card. So at this point, I do have to wrap things up, because I am now, I do have to get to the function I have to get to right now, which started a few minutes ago. So I do have to run in there. So thank you so much for tuning in. I do need some drum rolls, please. So if I can get some drum rolls, we're going to give away this $15 Amazon gift card. And I do have the name of the person here. So I need some drum rolls, please. Get some drum rolls. I'm going to just type in drum roll. And if you can help me out and throw that in there, that would be great. There we go. Awesome game. Thank you very much. Julian, wow, it says that it's being held for review. I'll show that. Okay, whatever this is. Okay, thank you very much. Valeria, okay. All right, so we have this. Okay, here we go. And drum roll, here comes. Valeria Hernandez, congratulations. You are the winner this evening of the $15 Amazon gift card. So congratulations. And I would like to thank all of you for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure spending my Thursday evening with you. It just means so much that we had so many different people who chimed in with so many different types of things. Hopefully you'll join me next week. I have another exciting podcast planned, and perhaps we can even revisit some of these marching band items in the future. So thank you so much to all of you. and go out there, recruit for your marching bands, explain all the reasons why people should be involved. For my students out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are the very, very best. And pass it along to others as I'm watching this honking car in the parking lot and as it continues to pour outside, and I'm going to get myself soaked. All right, everyone, have a great evening. Be safe out there. Peace.